Hello, I'm Pastor Hilly. Thank you for joining us for Faith Lutheran Church's Adult Forum series. We're calling this episode Lutherans in Social Service. But before we get to the topic and our special guest this week, a brief reminder that during this time of social distancing, there is wonderful ministry coming out of the community that we call Faith Lutheran Church in Whitehall, Ohio. Ministry that includes this very podcast. If you would like to support the ministry of faith financially, please find the link labeled Giving in the description below. And now, on to our topic. Joining me today is Benjamin Powers, who is the Congregational Relations Manager at Lutheran Social Services. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. And so in this socially distant life, how's it treating you, man?
Well, as for many folks out there, it has been quite the adjustment. My family, we have 5 kids, so there's not a whole lot of physical distancing at home between them and me. But we found ourselves, me in particular, I found myself learning new apps and trying to engage in as many ways as possible via video, chat, and apps and Zoom calls and on and on and on, trying to just keep some sort of semblance of humanity out there. But it's been an adjustment. It's been an adjustment to really understand what role we play in the larger community.
One thing I've noticed, because you figure that we all kind of went shelter at home right around, I think it was March 16th. Mm-hmm. And so, that's over, 5 weeks, 6 weeks now. I found myself, maybe discovering is the wrong word, but like rediscovering hobbies and things that I've done, because I'm just kind of like, all right, so like, I've started geocaching a lot more. I haven't found a geocache in 4 years, and I found 20 in the last week. Bike riding, because if you go to the park, there's a lot of people in the parking lot, but I took the Alum Creek Trail from 3 Rivers all the way to Westerville, and I saw 4 people. So like, are you discovering or rediscovering, or are you introducing your kids to like new stuff, or is it just kind of like, look, we got to hold the ship together and get through this?
Yeah. Well, I've been definitely getting some things off my to-do list around the house. Put up a fence, and then another perimeter, different style of fence. But with the kids, we added to our board game collection, and so we've had a lot more of that. So we've jumped aboard the Ticket to Ride train, and so it's been a lot of fun with that. A lot of tears, but they'll recover. And but so we are board game family. We play a lot of Catan. We play a lot of a game called Dominion. The kids really love that. And then the traditionals, the Scrabbles, the Boggles, the Monopoly. But we really like strategy board games, so it's been fun. Ticket to Ride was a purchase we made right after the stay-at-home stuff went into effect. We're like, we got to get this. I think we got it like a day before we got the Amazon notice, hey, we're only going to be sending out essential stuff. So for us, it's been essential.
Have you ever played Camel Up?
No.
My favorite board game ever. It's just, it won some German board game award in 2014. It's a little strategy, but it's also a little bit of chaos. So it hits you're essentially racing camels around the pyramid.
Yes.
There's a great way to teach your children how to gamble too.
Perfect.
Win-win. Win-win.
Yeah. I love it. I'll check that out for sure.
Yeah. Oh, good times. So this coming Sunday is the fourth Sunday in Easter, which I know at a number of synods I've done a lot of work with across America is typically, it's Good Shepherd Sunday in the ELCA. And I've often seen that in synods as a really big rally day for a lot of the LSS ministries and a lot of the outreach. Is that the case here in Southern Ohio Synod?
It has been. There's been a few different points in the calendar that really take opportunity. More so in the fall, late summer, fall time, with really getting a call to action to be out in the community. But usually at the end of Easter, it's a real opportunity for folks and kind of looking what normally would be summertime relaxed schedules and things like that. So it provides a good opportunity in the calendar to look for those things. Obviously, right now it's a bit different.
Yeah.
Understatement of the year.
but, I mean, that's a great segue, right? So, before we talk about the realities at hand, Lutheran Social Services does so much vital work across Columbus and the state of Ohio, without a doubt. And so let's start with the positive, because I always love starting with the positive. Prior to March 16th, tell me what were some of your favorite LSS programs leading up to the shelter at home?
Yeah. So probably my favorites were the three main core ministries here in Columbus, being the food pantry, and that actually is so Champion Food Pantry, which has been a mainstay on the south side of Columbus. We actually are just, as this all was rolling out, we were actually finishing a pretty major renovation project there, but it actually extends. We have mobile distributions out east in Ohio, down along the Ohio River. We have another food pantry in Fairfield County and Lancaster, as well as other places throughout. And so that has, all of the services really in Columbus has been at Champion. And so that's been a great thing for me. I often say there's really no more humbling experience than when you pass a loaf of bread to someone else and you can hear in their voice their gratitude for receiving it. And then choices for domestic violence, victims of domestic violence. That shelter, we're the only shelter in Franklin County, and so that's been a big favorite of mine. We completed that a renovation or building project rather last January, and so we've only been in the space for a little over a year in the new updated space, and so that's been a big aspect of getting to show the community, show pastors, talk to churches about, because we've really in the last year, about this time last year is when we even started doing volunteer opportunities there. And so that has been really the main focus between the two of them. And then my heart pulls for Faith Mission. I served as a director of a homeless shelter for families with children and pregnant mothers up in Delaware County for a few years before coming to LSS. And so I'm always impressed by what we can accomplish at Faith Mission, and it's also it's awe-inspiring to see the amount of folks that are in need and how we are able to meet that need by the support of the community, particularly the faith community. So those are definitely the three. I spent, prior to all this, probably spent majority of my time down at the food pantries, meeting with our churches. I try to get down there almost every time we got a church coming in to volunteer as a group to just to greet them and to make sure everything's well and everything along those lines. And so that's been a noticeable change. But
absolutely. And I mean, I remember there was an email. It probably wasn't 36 hours after kind of the shelter at home order went in place and that sort of thing. I mean, you're really on top of the ball, and talked about how you were paring back volunteers at the Champion Avenue food pantry and things like that. And so, like, I guess one of my questions is, so what does your job look like in a world where congregations aren't meeting? You're not having
Yeah.
that face time with. So, what does your world look like?
Yeah, so a lot of what I've been doing has been emails, phone calls, a lot of handwritten notes. I don't have my access to my printer, so a lot of hand. I'm trying my best to write legible. So, but early on, actually, when everything kind of went sideways, if you will, I was actually still out in the food pantry almost every day because initially we were having folks that weren't able to serve, and we hadn't really adjusted our model until we were really trying to hold out. So our model in normal circumstances is on the premise of choice, and so we try to allow our clients to choose what food they are getting.
Right.
And so that we held out for as long as possible on that. And so that's really important to us. It still is, but obviously under the circumstances, it became impossible for us to be able to do that while not having the levels of volunteers to make it possible. So we still are able to give really good boxes. They all have about 20 items. They're standardized, so they're not exactly the same, but they're the same of type. So there may be 5 canned vegetables in there. They may not all be corn, but everyone's getting some canned vegetables, that sort of thing. But they've been good boxes: toilet paper, dish soap, laundry soap, some other care items, and pasta, dried goods, dried beans, canned goods, fruits, vegetables. So, I mean, it's a really good box. It's just not what we wanted to. So, but we had to go to that model so that we could do it with less people, so that we could be socially distanced, and so we could also streamline the process.
So, I mean, just for anyone listening who may not be aware of kind of the whole reality, I mean, if we use the Champion Avenue as an example, so is it open 5 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Is the understanding that box would help a family or individual for 3 days, 5 days, 2 days? Can you give us a little background on that?
Yeah. So the way it's working now is that we are serving Tuesday through Friday in the afternoons, and folks still set up appointments through online, and then we have a call center that if there's not access to online, they can still call and place an order. And so we get a window of appointment. And so, yeah, it's about 3 days worth of food. And there's some adjustment based on family size to try to achieve that 3 days. And then folks who don't have appointments, we are still serving. Just instead of getting the box, they have access to bread and frozen meat, and then fresh produce. And so when folks come for an order that they've placed, they get bread and meat and fresh produce. And so then anyone who shows up who doesn't have an order, we're still able to get food. And then we also are able to get them the information so that they can call in or fill out online and get in that. And so, and the way it works is that there's basically, based on family size, there's an allotment of points under normal circumstances. And so then they could do that on a monthly basis. And then as much as they need to, they can come in for the fresh produce and bread. So, yeah, and that's, we've definitely seen a large increase, as you expect, particularly, I mean, I think they just officially said we've had 1 million unemployment claims in the last 6 weeks here in Ohio. So, and I mean, that's a higher percentage. I think they said 25 million across the country, and 1 million of that's just here in Ohio. And so, and as you can imagine, there's a high increase with that. And I actually was down at the pantry. We had a circumstance in which our staff were exposed to someone who had tested positive. And so our entire food pantry staff were quarantined. And I was the only one who had ever used our computer system and knew of the model and everything. So for a week, I was the acting food pantry director, food pantry manager. So I got to see firsthand as we made the changes to streamline the process, and it was great. We had some great folks that jumped in with us, but that week I had so many. We served 275 clients in 3 days, 275 families in 3 days. Which represents about 1,000 people in those. And the one day I checked, I didn't check every day, but the one day I checked, we served like 83, and 25 of the 83 were brand new to us, brand new. Wow. So, and I heard that a lot of folks who were just like, we used to come here, we used this pantry years ago. I've never used this pantry. I've never used any pantry. A lot of conversations that I had with clients that, found themselves in a very tough spot, and very, very fortunate and proud that we were able to be there and continue to be there. I think that there's going to be a lot, obviously there's economic sides of this, there's domestic sides of this. There's a lot that's going to be happening. We're going to see more and more, even after the stay-at-home orders are lifted, kind of the long-term effects that, we're primed and in a position to be able to help serve folks. So
absolutely. I mean, I think the thing I keep hearing on NPR is that in Ohio, more people have applied for unemployment in the last month than did in the calendar year of 2019.
Yeah.
And the ripple effect of that is just terrifying. Yeah. And it hits so many people in so many different ways. But I do want to commend you, because as you were talking, you ran through this checklist in my head, because you're like, oh, you can go online, or you can call, or you can show up, right? Because not everybody has at-home internet access.
Absolutely.
Not everybody has a cell phone. So to give people all three options, would you mind, what's the, if you want to call the food pantry, what is the phone number for that?
Oh, I should have been prepared with that answer.
How about this? We'll make sure that the website and the phone number are in the description below this video.
Yes.
For anybody who needs it.
I can't remember if it's 800 or 888. It's LSS Meals. So, but yeah, we'll definitely put it in the description for that, because that's definitely really helpful. But yeah, and that's all across all of our programs, across all of everything we do. We really, really try to be aware and mindful of accessibility, because it's a really it's an easy thing to just assume everyone has internet access or everyone knows how to use a website, and that's obviously not the case. And for so many who find themselves in something at maybe for the first time, or that they're dealing with something for the first time, it can be overwhelming to try to figure out how to get access to things. And so anytime we're able to do that in a variety of ways, that's really what we try to do. So I just think that the more that we can be available to folks, just personally, the more we can be available to helping our community, the better off we're going to come out on the other side of this. Because I agree, it's really scary, the ramifications and consequences. I mean, real lives that are in jeopardy or in going to be altered for a really long time. I mean, I I can't even imagine the mental health side of things.
Right.
I mean, we just in general, I think everyone's getting just a small taste of isolation. Yep. And I don't really think we can fully grasp how that hits everybody. So, but real quick, I have the number, so I wanted to get it. So it's 1-877 LSS meal.
Okay.
We'll still put it on the description, but no, I want to get it on there.
Thank you, sir. But you know, like back in the day, everything was 1-800, and now it's 1-888.
Exactly.
7. Yeah, no harm, no foul on that one. Have you run into anybody who is surprised that LSS things are still going on in the midst of stay-at-home order and shutdowns and whatnot? Because I don't know. I mean, in the world, like you and I live in a very similar world. And I would just assume that a food pantry or services like that would be open. But have you had calls from people who are, first of all, surprised and then thankful that it is open?
Yeah, we've more of the thankful than the surprise. And so they probably are in tandem, but we get a lot of feedback of just appreciation of access to food, access to services. And I think that's, that's definitely been a strong emphasis for us, is to make sure we can be as open as possible. Obviously there's certain constraints and guidelines and protocols and procedures, and we're abiding by those and doing our very best, and that's all in the forefront of our mind. And so that's even the decision to go from a choice model to what we're doing, it really had safety in mind. So now we're able to do it with less people in the building. Clients don't actually enter the building. We serve out of our exits. So our doors and garage doors, we're able to serve from the sidewalk. Our other distributions, we're able to do same or similar things. And even our services at Faith Mission and at Choices, things are different. Things look different. We've had to make some adjustments on where things happen and what things happen. But ultimately, we're still serving our clients. We're still providing the food and the shelter and the safety and the healing that is necessary. So, and our hope and our prayer is that we'll be able to maintain and continue that throughout however long this ends up being. So
yeah. And you underline kind of a theological ideology. I try to promote as much as I can because I'm very intentional at avoiding the word cancel when I talk to anybody, right? You're like, so we're canceling church. And I always make, I make the semantic shift. I say, live events have been postponed.
Mm-hmm.
You can't cancel the Church of Jesus Christ.
No.
I mean, you may not have met for worship on Easter, but to quote Hippolytus, hell was still trampled underfoot. The empty tomb is found.
Amen.
And the work of ministry, which is so much of what LSS does, feeding the hungry and offering support, and as we pray for one another, that's still happening and still needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether or not we're meeting for worship in a familiar or a traditional arena or anything like that. So that being said, I think it brings up two obvious questions that are pretty intertwined as we look forward. I mean, because, DeWine has announced it's kind of phase one as we're moving, taking these next steps into the future together, whatever that future is. I have the belief that schools, sporting events, and churches, anything that are mass gatherings, are obviously going to be the tail end of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that being said, are you seeing, projecting, understanding, bracing for an exponential growth of need? And then the back end of that is, are there resources that will be able to keep up, whether that's dry goods or human resources or otherwise?
Yeah, and so for the first part, absolutely yes. We have already seen that in the food pantry and are believing that that will continue. And the longer folks are unemployed and the longer this goes, the more the need and the more realization of the need for food. And we actually, I was just on a call this morning, when it comes to choices, we are acutely aware and looking at national statistics as well as our own data, as well as our own historical data, that we know that anytime there's been any sort of a lull, that it always comes back even stronger. And at the beginning of this, there's been a bit of a, with the stay-at-home order, folks aren't able to get out of their situations. And so we are anticipating as things start loosening up, the demand and the need to get into choices is going to increase rapidly. And so I think that, we look at, I shared my background. I was a director of a homeless shelter, family homeless shelter. And, the issue of housing and affordable housing is near and dear to my heart. I can jump on many a soapbox with that. But I think that, things that were already issues in our community are just going to be magnified. And so things that were already challenged are going to be near impossible. And so that's where our resources and our help and our assistance and our guidance is all the more important. And in fact, I think that then to the second part, that's where, churches are feeling the squeeze like everyone else. And so perhaps financially isn't as doable as it was pre-COVID-19, but there's still many ways to get involved. And actually, I have 2 churches this week that are doing item drives for our food pantry, where they're setting up at their church parking lot and folks can drop off on designated day time, hey, we're collecting these canned goods, and then a couple days later they're going to deliver them to the pantry. Things like that it's, there's still a certain level, and I tell you what, to have something to get out to go do, and there's a certain level of anticipation, and but yeah, so our focus has really been during this time of continuing to look for, seek out anyone who does have some sort of resource that can be used, not just at our social services, but we have other facilities. We have affordable housing units in 21 counties that are primarily for seniors. We have up in Ashland area, we have the Good Shepherd skilled nursing facility, as well as some other housing resources. We have Kensington Place and here retirement community here in Columbus. Other things like that like across our programs, PPE, things like that we need and have been sourcing and really have turned that into, because obviously we need to be able to continue to operate safely. And so those are things too. So even if it's as simple as, hey, maybe we can't send a check this month, but brother so-and-so, sister so-and-so, they've got a connection with an organization who or a business who's retrofitted, and now they're making hand sanitizer. Let's see if we can send over a drum of hand sanitizer to Faith Mission, or stuff like that's really practical and helpful in carrying out, because those things offset costs, because this is a brand new level of cost for us across our programs, and so it's really helpful. Those are really helpful. So there's definitely a shifting.
If I ask you a question there, let's say somebody's listening and thinks to themselves, oh man, my congregation, like every congregation in Columbus, let's say, we're not meeting, we're not doing mass gatherings, but it would be awesome to do a drive-through drop-off for corn, as we talked about that earlier. My first question is there a list of things on the website that you would prefer to have donated? Or B, if someone just wants to give a call, can they call that 1-877 LSS Meals number? Or is there a better way to say, hey, my church wants to do this, what do you need?
Yeah, so first of all, on our website, we have ways to get involved that includes an Amazon wish list for our different programs. And so then that's a really great way to help send needed items for our shelters in particular. And then, yes, that they can call that 877 LSS meal number, or the representative from the church could email me directly, and that's bpowers@lssnetworkofhope.org. And we can throw that in the description as well. So any sort of contact whatsoever, I can answer any questions for any church, and I can make sure to get in touch, and I can have an up-to-date items list and give you the exact size of items for our food pantry. We try to get them to be exactly or as close as possible to be the same out of our inventory. So yeah, that's definitely something. And we can always, like right now, we've got 60 plus kids at Choices. And so we're going through the snacks pretty heavily, as you can imagine. So snack items, if anyone has any sort of like, hey, this is a really fun game activity for kids, we could pass that along to our staff, and anything like that can continue to be helpful. And so it's let's look at ways, areas that God has gifted us and how we can share those talents, and we'll put them to good use. So
yeah. And I realize that in the world that we're living in, I'm asking you a question to totally shoot from the hip here, because nobody knows what Ohio is going to look like a week from now.
Yeah.
In a best case scenario, when might there be the opportunity for volunteers to interact with the various things around Franklin counties and other counties in Southern Ohio?
Yeah. So right now, volunteer has been suspended at Choices and at Faith Mission at our shelter sites. We've reduced back by almost 80% at our food pantries. We have about 10 spots a week at our food pantries. And so we do still have opportunities at the food pantries. And through our website, you can actually find ways to get involved on the website. There's a page for that. And it can show you can get connected to what options, what shifts are open. I would anticipate here, my best guess is in 2 weeks. If things are the same as they are right now, my best guess is in about 2 weeks, we're going to start opening up maybe like 1 or 2 opportunities each day at Choices and at Faith Mission. We are particularly at Faith Mission, where we actually be at our Faith on 8th shelter, that I think we could handle 1 or 2 folks in the kitchen, and the same with at Choices. So we will have limited that end of things, but one of the big things that actually I was in the process of really building up prior to this all happening, was looking for kind of off-site opportunities for folks to be able to, as a congregation. Now, obviously, this would still have to be adjusted, but prior to this, the idea was that a congregation could, they could all work together to collect items that then maybe after church on a Sunday, the youth group could then put them all together, package them however.
Oh, wow.
So something that would be off-site that still would be helpful. So that's definitely we're work in progress on that. The other volunteer opportunity that's probably the most we're going to be able to have at any given time, I would anticipate in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to be opening up slots of up to 5 in our donation center that's at Faith Mission. That's our in-kind items that we collect for all of our shelters. So it's a very large space that several thousands of square feet. So it could be socially distanced in that way. But we will be able to take up to 5, I would say, at any given shift. Probably once or twice a week, we'll be opening that up to be able to sort through the donations that we're getting. And what that does is it prepares us to be able to get that out to our clients at all of our different shelters. So those are probably the volunteer opportunities that are on the horizon, aside from off-site, drive up donation, kind of drive-through donation opportunities. So,
and I think that, I mean, just again, in the circles that we run, we both know a bunch of pastors, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like I say this in every conversation I have, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but we live in the Wild West right now. Yeah. In terms of what ministry looks like and how we support one another. It really is a Wild West. And to be able to talk to pastors who I know both within 270 and across the nation, to say, hey, like, give a call to your local food pantry, give a call to whatever your arm of LSS is. Yeah. Your congregation may not be worshiping, but to allow members to drive through and drop off corn or beans or pasta, whatever it is, it provides that physical connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even being in the parking lot, but on a much more important level, it feeds people in the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a total win-win.
It is. I on my handwritten notes, every single one of them, I write the same phrase. It's together, we live out our faith to create a better world by serving people in need. And that's the heart of it all. Like this is an expression of our faith, and this is us sharing God to other people. This is showing God's love, and that's at its core. That's what we can do, and that can be done in a variety of ways. And everyone has the capacity to show kindness, and everyone has the capacity to share that love. So we were ultimately created for this. We were created to be in community, and I think any opportunity we can present to be able to live that out, to show that, is really rewarding internally and rewarding spiritually. There's a lot to it.
I saw a tweet today, and I'm sure other people have said it. I don't even remember whose account it was on, but the quote was, church has not been suspended. The church has been deployed.
Yes, that's good.
And I was like, that's a really, again, like, let's think about everything in the most positive way.
Yeah.
That is dead on. You know? All right, so we can't hang out on Sunday morning. But again, the church isn't canceled. Like, the church is doing what the church is meant to do.
Yeah. And I mean, is weird, and I don't want this to come across tone deaf, but as weird as it sounds, there's a certain level of excitement that exists that of like, hey, we've got to be creative here. Necessity is the mother of invention. We've got to figure this out. People need food. People need shelter. People need safety. People need healing. We have to figure out a way to keep these services going. And so there's a level down in the gut that just like, we're figuring this out. Like, it's resolved. Like, we're figuring it out. But so there's a level of dare say excitement that's
and I don't think that's being tone deaf at all. I made the comment to a friend the other day that I'm a cradle Lutheran, and I studied migratory patterns of European immigrants to America and the history of American Lutheranism. Like, that is my jam. One thing we've never been as a church is nimble. You know, we just haven't been. That is not who we are. And again, necessity is the mother of invention. We are learning how to be nimble at a rate like none other. Yeah. Or at no other point in time in the history of American Lutheranism. Yeah. To say, okay, there are needs. Like, all right, we can't schedule 17 committee meetings between now and then. Like, we need to collect some, green beans. Let's make that happen. Yeah. I had a wonderful conversation with the president of my congregation. I got a call from the mayor, and Mayor Maggart in Whitehall got connected with an organization, and they wanted to hand out free meals to citizens of Whitehall. Awesome. And they were looking for a location on the west side. And so we're on the west side. And so I get a call from her, and I call my council president, and we have this conversation. And I love Dory to death. And she asked the appropriate Robert's Rules of Order question. We need to call the council meeting. And I love Dory to death, because to be honest, I had the same thought. And then we were talking about it, and I go, you know what, Dory, I think that this is what we can do to engage with the community. Yes. And, yes. And the next day, the city showed up, and we gave out free meals. And that's awesome. Because that's what we're called to do. And I love my leadership council. I can't speak highly enough about them. Yeah. Because again, they're like, this is the need. This is what we can do. Let's absolutely. Do. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, Dory, if you're listening, thank you so much for your amazingly nimble leadership. I always get weird when I tell a story and it has a name. I don't want to throw them under the bus. But she did exactly what needed to happen in the spirit of ministry in that moment. Yeah. And then, we sent an email out to the council, and everyone said the same thing. No, this is perfect. This is what we're here to do. Amen. Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to ask a question, especially with your background in sustainable housing and that sort of thing. And one of the stories, or one of the threads that I'm hearing through NPR articles and things in the Dispatch, and I realize that this comment in and of itself is me speaking from a position of privilege, because I can say, this is a story I'm following, like I'm disconnected from it. Yeah. Because I do have the ability to get online and do X, Y, or Z. Columbus being one of the hardest cities in America to break through the poverty line. Columbus being one of a city with a really negative reputation of being really racially divided. From your understanding and from where you sit with LSS, are you seeing kind of deep-seated systemic issues being underlined in obvious ways by this pandemic? And I can give an example. I was talking to a dear friend of mine who's a ministry out in Chicago, and I asked him the same question, and he goes, well, in Chicago, he goes, you hear people saying, well, people on the South Side are ignorant because there's more cases on the South Side. He goes, but a lot of the people on the South Side are the people who are working essential jobs, because they're checking you out at the grocery store. They're working in janitorial services. They're working these pay-by-the-hour jobs. Or, there's just so many factors, multi-generational housing. And then, so you have the grandparent who is more susceptible to COVID-19, the grandchild who is being raised, and so it underlines, and I mean, you and I could probably spend 2 hours talking about systemic issues and how they for sure impact our culture. But are you seeing those issues underlined or spotlighted? Yeah, I think 100%. I think privilege exists in our world, but in here in our area. And I think that when we are in privilege, we tend to overlook things that seem simple or seem obvious to us. A laptop, phone, good internet, access to food, suitable housing, access to medical care, things that we just assume that are available, or that we have, that everyone has them because we have them. That in essence is privilege. And I think that
we haven't dealt with, we haven't been confronted with, I guess, as much on the side of folks outside of clients right now when it comes to the needs and things. But I know from my own experience that the first step in understanding the privilege that we have is to acknowledge that it exists, but also to acknowledge that it's here in our community, that issues exist in our community. I know about 15 years ago, I went to LA as part of my undergrad studies. It's called Ministry in Social Context. And every other section has always gone to DC, and every section afterwards went to DC. We went to LA for 10 days. We saw 30 sites, ministry sites, dealing with ranges from pro bono services with immigration and with housing and to soup kitchens to we took a tour of Skid Row, and the first night we got off the plane, and before we even went to the hotel, we drove through as it was getting dark through Skid Row, and then 2 days later we were walking the streets, and that was my first real experience with homelessness. And you know, homelessness doesn't always look the same in every context, certainly, but it was one of those things that 15 years ago, I would never have thought that there was a homeless person really in my community. That's only in the cities. And that's a lie. And it's something that we like to cling to, that, oh, that doesn't happen here, or that isn't what's the case here. And so I think the first step is for us to acknowledge that it is an issue and there are issues in our community. And the next step is to get involved, to educate ourselves with how these what seem really extreme for some of us, you know, these measures, the stay-at-home orders, all the measures, and yet there are some folks that it's not just extreme, it's crippling. It's, you know, I'm very fortunate and very thankful for my job, and I have a job, and I have friends who don't have a job right now, and who have been struggling for several weeks to get their unemployment to go through. And I have other friends who aren't even eligible for unemployment. And, you know, that's real life. And, you know, in an instant, life changed. And it's a lot of ways, it's similar to when a disaster hits, something that we talk a lot about with LSS, our disaster recovery kind of section of our social services aspect, is that, you know, it's not just a, hey, let's throw some money at it and it's just going to solve it. Like, this is a long-term committed restoration project. Like, this is a recovery. This is going to take some time. And so it's important for us to understand that there are folks in our community who have been hit harder than others. And it's not anything of their doing. It's not their fault. They didn't choose that. They didn't, they just didn't have, they weren't in the same position as everyone else. And so it's going to hit them harder. These measures in place, you know, when folks have to live a certain lifestyle based on the income they have coming in, well, when that's suddenly taken, that there's no options anymore of lifestyle, you know, and there's a lot of different studies and things out there that talk about, you know, the wage gap is, it's huge. I remember when I first started as a shelter director, I went through a program, and it was it was this lady's story. It was out of Pennsylvania, but she talked about her journey of going from being working minimum wage, and she had high aspirations to go back to school to complete her, to complete not only a bachelor's degree, but get a master's degree, to work in social work. I mean, she had a goal and she achieved that goal, but all along it talked about, she talked about the economic hardships that she experienced when she went from working minimum wage and some of the assistance that she was receiving, where effectively her level of income was with the benefits that they had and the medical and things. And as she increased her income, all those things dropped. And it wasn't until extremely farther later down the line before she ever got back to the same quote unquote level. And I think that when we aren't in that and we don't see people struggling through that, making that climb, putting in that effort, dealing with the different struggles that come along, the unknown factors and the things that are completely out of their control, I think it's really easy to be ignorant, and also really easy to be apathetic. And so I always suggest for folks to recognize that, you know, poverty exists, hunger exists, homelessness exists, violence exists, and that we need to educate ourselves if we have been privileged enough that we're not dealing with those issues that exist in our community. And so there's a variety of ways. We are just one aspect, LSS, we are just one aspect of this, you know, when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to educating, and then we have the mental health side of things, we have the spiritual side of things. There's a lot to what is going on, and it's really a collective effort to be able to address these issues. But we, for those of us in privilege of not dealing with those issues in our own lives, we have to understand that it's real, and that we can do something about it together. And that's really what the call to action is that, like, you know, hunger exists in your community. And I think it's awesome that you guys are kind of the depot for the food, you know, like that's great. And you know, those are the sort of things that are inspiring to me. I love hearing that. I love hearing the feedback from churches after a drive, or after a volunteer experience, or after you know, even when I can report back, you know, give money from something, and I can say, hey, this is what it went towards, and you know, these are the lives that were impacted.
Do you find do you find that whenever you're able to have that follow-up conversation, be like, thank you for X went to Y, that you know, like when I've had those similar conversations involving ministries I've done, it always feels like that moves the can so much further down the road. Yeah. Like, you know, you can kick that can to say, hey, thank you so much for your donation. With your donation, we, you know, bought 270 meals that we, you know what I mean? Yeah. Do you find the same kind of thing to give that almost tangible kind of reality?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's to be honest, the effect is less about that it becomes reciprocal, that it's like, hey, yeah, go ahead and, you know, give us back more money, you know, but it's more about the impact and the boldness that it can create in the giver, that is like, hey, you know, that changed lives. You know, we just provided a meal down at Faith Mission, and that fed hundreds of people. Like, that's something to get excited about. Yeah. And I think that's where there's a level where we're finding ourselves back similar. I don't want to say it's exactly the same by any stretch, but similar to the New Testament church. You know, they saw needs in their community and they met those needs. And like, and that was important. And you know, I think that there's I'm hoping, let me change. I'm hoping that there continues to be a real appetite for that as we continue through this recovery process. And I'm hopeful that we're going to start to talk about the recovery process.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the recovery process, as we kind of start to draw things to a close, give me your elevator pitch. What can people do to help now, 4 months from now, 14 months from now? Like, what can we do? You know, if we think about this like from the lens of St. Mark, right? Like immediately, what can we do right now? And then later on down the road. Are we good?
Sorry about that. I just got, we are experiencing the world of Zoom. I just had a, oh, are we back?
Yep, I got you. Maybe it's lagging.
Okay. All right, here we go.
All right, good.
Okay. Yeah, so first and foremost, and I express this, I'm a firm believer in the power of prayer, and I appreciate the fervent prayers, and you know, be praying for our clients, be praying for our frontline workers, be praying for those who are working in the shelter and at the food pantry, and in our assisted living facility, and those that are across our entire LSS network of hope, that are ministering and are being the hands and feet of a larger body that exists. So prayer first and foremost, and you know, we are going to have some limited volunteer experiences, and so there's going to be opportunity to kind of get out and kind of stretch the legs a bit. And so I'm looking forward to that. And then, you know, looking for some unique ways to maybe do some item drives, some that maybe looks a little bit different, that as we are creative and looking for opportunities to serve. And so definitely that, and obviously it can always be helpful, financial support through our website or sending checks, that goes a long way. One thing we talk about often is like at our food pantry, every dollar that you could spend at the store buying something, we can buy $4 worth of stuff for the same dollar. So there's a level of, there's buying power that exists. So we can use those dollars, and then in our new digital world, liking, sharing, you know, digitally sharing and spreading the word. So maybe it's not even something that you yourself can help with, but just hitting that share button can help spread the word and can help get the need out. So if we're needing something specifically at Choices or something like that, so make sure to follow us on our all of our different platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of our different programs. And lastly, I'd say a good resource is ultimately our website. Obviously, there's information that we keep up to date on there. We have our wish lists on there. We have access to our volunteer opportunities on there, and as well as the ability to donate through the website. So that's kind of the quick, how can we get involved? How can we help? But those are all positive ways. And it's all something, we can all do some of that. There's something we can do in that. We can hit the share button on a post. Like, we can do that. So that's what's exciting. There's opportunity for every single one of us to be involved and to know that we are part of a larger community response in this recovery. So yeah.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that the LSS website and all of the different social media handles will be in the description below for anybody looking to try to make that connection and be supportive to what you all are doing in the face of shelter at home and far beyond that. And yeah. So Ben, thank you for everything that you do at LSS as the Congregational Relations Manager, everything you do across Ohio in all of your many arms. Yeah, man, and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Look forward to seeing you in person in the future.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, hey, you take care and God bless.
God bless you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.